Hello and welcome back to this Menopause Masterclass. You've found us here in Module 2, so hopefully you've watched the first module looking at why our body has changes and how the different reproductive hormones can affect the way our body functions. In this session we're going to talk a lot more about your weight management and really being the boss of your weight, taking control and making some positive changes in order to manage how you look and feel. So how does this magic hormone estrogen really have an impact on our energy balance? When we're talking about energy balance, we're thinking about the amount of energy that comes into our body versus the amount that we're using up. And of course, this can be a very much conscious thing that we choose how much food we eat, how often we eat it, the composition, so how much energy is within the food we're eating, how much fat, protein, carbohydrates, and then also how much exercise we're going to do. However, also within our bodies regulate our own energy balance. And our estrogen, as well as leptin, which we're going to mention here, have a really big impact on the way our body regulates itself. So pre-menopause, we tend to have less abdominal fat. You've probably seen this sort of image before. As you can see on the slide, we've got someone who's indicated as being apple-shaped and someone else as pear-shaped. So pre-menopause, we tend to carry more weight around our hips and our bums. This is a benefit for childbearing. And then once our estrogen reduces, the fat distribution does change and we end up with more fat around our middles. So whilst we're a pear shape, we find that we're much more sensitive to the insulin within our body, and we'll have a little bit more of a look at how insulin works. We also find that the estrogen within our body talks to a part of our brain called the hypothalamus. And having more estrogen in our body reduces our appetite and also increases the amount of energy used within our body for different functions. So in effect, as we go through the menopause, our body slows down a little bit, our metabolism slows down a little bit, but also our appetite can increase. So it's this two-pronged approach which makes it a little bit more difficult to manage your weight, and you may find that it feels like your weight loss is more stubborn. You need to make a lot more changes in order to have an impact. There's another hormone within our body. It's produced within our stomach, and it's called leptin. You may well have heard of these two substances, leptin and ghrelin, which have been shown to have a real impact on obesity. So this is one of the reasons why some individuals find it really, really difficult to lose weight, whereas other people naturally maintain a healthy weight. And it's to do with the way our different bodies are made up. So leptin, this sort of magic hormone, helps to reduce our appetite and increase our energy usage, and it's impacted on by our estrogen levels. So it may be that before the menopause you found that you weren't really that hungry, you could eat when you noticed you were hungry, and your energy balance was quite stable, your weight was stable, and you were happy with how things were. And then all of a sudden things start to change, you find it much more difficult to control your weight goes up, and you find you're hungry all the time. Certainly not your imagination, it might well be your hormones playing tricks on you, but what we need to do is be very mindful of this and see if we can make some conscious changes to our lifestyle habits in order to counteract these effects. So we need to be really aware of our appetite. It might be that you want to keep a diary, some sort of food log. You could write something down on a piece of paper. You could take some photos with your phone for a few days and see how much you're eating. So it all starts with knowing where you're at the beginning. You might find if you keep a diary and then reflect back on how you were eating maybe 5-10 years ago, you might think, actually, no, that is different. Things have changed. Lots of reasons this can happen. New work, different family commitments. But it could also be that your body's telling you that you're more hungry and you find yourself eating more snacks, or your food habits have changed. Practice some mindfulness around your eating. So as we know, reduced estrogen levels mean that you can become more hungry. So it's so super important that we listen to our inner cues of fullness. We've got certain stretch receptors within our stomach, which tell our brain when we've had enough to eat. But often with our busy lifestyles, we don't give ourselves enough time to eat and enough time for these stretch receptors to send the message to our brain to say, oh, you can stop eating now, I actually do feel full. And this process can take around 20 minutes. So if we quickly eat, and especially I find this happens when I'm super hungry and I eat too fast, you get to that point 20 minutes later where you think, oh my goodness, I've eaten too much. And it could be because you just haven't really been aware of your body because you were so hungry that you then end up overeating. So a bit of mindfulness, being really aware of what you're doing, can help. So take your time, sit down at a table, think about your eating habits. Are you eating on the run? Are you concentrating on your food choices? And this can help. How about your meal frequency? I don't know if you noticed, but some people seem to be able to get away with 1 or 2 meals in a day, and other people feel they need to graze all day long in order to sort of maintain their sugar levels and not feel weak and shaky and a bit hangry. So you might find that as you go through the menopause, your meal frequency can change. You may previously have been the type of person who needs to eat quite often, and as your metabolism's slowing down because of these hormone changes, you might find that you can get away with eating a little bit less often. Now, these habits that we build are really ingrained into us, so it takes a bit of conscious effort to stop and think, do I need to eat as often as I do? And maybe experiment with eating a little bit less often and see if that works for you. The less often we eat, it's likely that we're going to reduce our energy intake. We've got less meals to think about and to plan, and those snacks really can add up. So often we talk about a snack being around 100 calories, but if we were to cut out 3 snacks in a day, we could cut out 300 calories in that case. Or if we're having some high energy snacks, just cutting out 1 snack in a day could make quite a big impact on your energy balance and your ability to manage your weight a little bit more easily. So think about your meal frequency, your snacking, keep a diary, and be really aware of what you're doing. It might well be that your habits need to change just because your body's changing, so you need to do things a little bit differently. So insulin sensitivity is very interesting. So estrogen has a protective effect on our body. So as we're going through this childbearing age, it helps our body to be more sensitive to the insulin that we produce. So have you heard of this hormone insulin before? It's something we often associate with people with diabetes. And interestingly, we do get an increased risk of diabetes once we've gone through the menopause. So insulin, we can see in this diagram here, I've written insulin on a little key shape. So insulin is like the key that opens up our cells for sugar. So anything we eat with carbohydrate in it, so whether it's fruit with fruit sugars, milk with milk sugars, a starchy carbohydrate like bread or rice or potatoes, or something with pure sugar in it like a fizzy drink, for example. These foods are digested and they release individual glucose molecules into our bloodstream. So we can see these little white dots are representing the glucose or the sugar in our blood. The insulin gets released from an organ called the pancreas, and it opens up the cells to allow the sugar to get from the blood into the cell where we can use it as energy. So when we're talking about cells, we're talking about your muscles, your lungs, your heart, your brain, anywhere we need energy in order to function. So as we go through the menopause and post-menopause, the body doesn't recognize our insulin as well. So if we suddenly have a lot of sugar in the system, it takes much longer for those cells to open up and to let the sugar in. So what we need to do is we need to reduce the glycemic load. We need to reduce the amount of sugar that we give to the body in one go. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. Obvious one is to have slightly smaller carbohydrate portions. So it might be that you would benefit from swapping from 2 or 3 slices of bread in the morning or toast to having 1 or 2, having a smaller bowl of porridge, having a smaller serving of rice or pasta with a main meal. So the way we can start this is thinking about our food diary, maybe taking some pictures of our food and thinking, what are my portions like at the moment? Could I make them a little bit smaller? Is there somewhere that I tend to eat a little bit more? Do you double up on your starchy portions? So would you have garlic bread with lasagna, for example? In which case you've got the pasta and the garlic bread, so maybe cut one of them out. Lots of different ways we can have smaller carbohydrate portions. So have a think about the foods that you like. Could you go for a diet version or a low sugar version? The other thing we can really look out for is choosing low GI. So these are our slowly absorbed foods, our low glycemic index foods. They tend to be whole grains, and whole grains are also really good for our heart health, really important post-menopause, as we tend to get higher cholesterol and our blood vessels aren't as elastic as they used to be, so we need to look after our cardiovascular systems. So whole grains, things like barleys, whole wheats, anything that says whole grain on it is going to be a better choice than a highly processed or white flour version. Resistant starches are more slowly absorbed, so this is when we've cooked something and cooled it, it actually absorbs more slowly. For example, a cold potato salad would absorb much slower than a hot potato. So resistant starches are something you can do a little bit more research on. And then when we're thinking about our fruits and vegetables, going for your low GI options, our less starchy options, and choosing the whole fruit or vegetables with the skin on if you can, as it's going to be more fiber, and this is going to slow down the absorption. So it'd be much better to have a whole apple, for example, than a glass of apple juice. You're going to have a smaller glycemic load. A glass of apple juice probably got 3 or 4 apples in it, whereas one whole apple is going to be less sugar, and you've got the fiber there, it's going to absorb more slowly. So focusing on your whole fruits and vegetables, your whole grains, and looking out for food labels that talk about low GI, really important. Also want to include plenty of protein. So our appetite has changed and we need to help ourselves feel fuller for longer, and protein can be helpful with this. Various different pieces of research have also shown that there's a slight increased need for protein post-menopause and as we go through perimenopause. So we're aiming for about 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram. We need to maintain our muscle mass. So this magic hormone estrogen, as it reduces, it doesn't maintain our muscle mass as much. And we mentioned, we sort of just touched in module 1 on testosterone as well. If our testosterone levels are also very low, this can also mean our muscle mass suddenly drops. So we want to help our body to maintain the muscle it's built up in our younger years, make sure it doesn't decline. And in order to do this, the protein that's stored within our muscles, we need to keep it there. If we're not eating enough protein, we start to break down our muscles to make our immune system stronger to fight off coughs and colds, that type of thing. They've also shown that people who have adequate amounts of protein have a reduced fracture risk. So with the menopause, we can see, and we'll talk a little bit more about calcium and vitamin D, our bones don't hold their strength quite as well. And this might not be something you're thinking about right now, but we want to think about keeping our bones strong for our older years, and having plenty of protein as well as calcium and vitamin D also helps to maintain our bone strength. You may be choosing plant proteins or animal proteins. So in some pictures here, we've got some beans, some lentils, nuts, eggs, fish, meat, and then also your meat alternatives like your soya, your corn. There's quite a few different options available. And thinking about your low GI options, we talked about whole grains. If we go for a whole grain breads, they also often tend to be higher in protein. So for example, a slice of a seeded whole grain bread could have as much as 4 to 6 grams of protein per slice, whereas a regular white bread's probably closer to 2. So those whole grains, seeds, lentils, beans, all really healthy as well. Great choices. So our final slide for this second module of our menopause masterclass, looking at being active. So the whole focus on the second module was about being the boss of your weight, being in control of your weight rather than letting your body control it. Being active is going to help support that energy balance. Getting outside in nature is going to also help with your mental health as well. Any exercise which is weight bearing, so something where you're jumping, skipping on your feet, is going to help to keep your bones stronger. Doing something with a little bit of weight, also really helpful for bone strength and muscle mass as well. So try not just to do cardiovascular exercise, really important to do some resistance work as well. Have a chat to your fitness team, get some advice, and if things aren't quite where you'd like them to be, maybe you just need to change up your routine a little bit and try something else. Try and be active as many days of the week as you can, and if you need to, break it up into bite-sized chunks. Short walk in the morning, be active in the middle of the day, take the stairs instead of the lift. I'm sure you've heard these things many a time, but they really do work and add up. So all the best with your weight. Have a look through the slides again, if you need a little bit more support, but we're really looking at energy balance, how often you eat, how often you snack, having nice high protein intake, and then focusing on our insulin sensitivity. So being careful to choose your low GI, your low sugar options. Choose your whole grains and your whole fruits and vegetables. Wishing you all the best, and I'll see you ready for Module 3.